military claims to have taken control of key areas north of Aleppo a day after the UN announced the Assad regime is willing to test a local ceasefire in the city. Ukrainian troops pull out of the embattled town of the Baltave, leaving it in control of pro-Russian separatists. Meanwhile, NATO urges Russia to withdraw all forces from the east. The largest treasure ever found in Israel, 2,000 gold coins dating back 1,000 years, is recovered from the seabed. I-24 News goes to the ancient harbor in Caesarea to see it up close.
The News Today with Lucy Aharich.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. The Syrian military today announced it has taken control of areas north of Aleppo, cutting off a key escape route to Turkey. Yet while regime troops are moving forward, the UN mediator on Syria said Tuesday evening that Bashar al-Assad is willing to stop all strikes on Aleppo for 6 weeks. It would be the first of a potential series of local truces. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Syria and the greater Middle East, the focus remains on the Islamic State terror group. The warnings are growing louder on Libya in particular, with concerns that the country is becoming the new hotbed of IS, only a boat ride away from Europe. The UN Security Council is meeting on the same issue today, with Arab countries calling for an end to an embargo on weapons sales to the Libyan government. We will speak with our analyst and a member of the Syrian opposition, but first, let's take a look back.
The government of Syria has indicated to me its willingness to halt all aerial bombing. I have no illusions because, based on past experiences, this will be a difficult issue to be achieved. Meanwhile, we will also pursue the political process which Cairo, Moscow have generated and actually build on it with a UN initiative.
And with me is former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, Eli Shaked. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. And also Dr. Anat Hochberg-Marom. Good evening, expert on global terrorism and marketing. Good evening. Thank you very much both for coming. So let's start. This is, can we say that it's a ceasefire or it's just a truce, small truce that will signal the rest of the fighting in the future?
In Syria?
In Syria. Well,
this is a big question mark over this issue. In Syria, everything can happen from one day to another. Maybe that Assad, President Assad of Syria, is showing some first signs of softening towards the groups, the fighters against his regime. Could be. What will happen tomorrow in Syria is an enigma to all of us.
Is he softening? Because just a few days ago we said that he is just showing his ability on the ground. He is maintaining his governmental and more than that, even combining the power with Hezbollah.
Right.
So is he actually softening, or is he getting to the point that he's saying, okay, maybe after 3 years enough is enough and I need to start cooling things down?
If we take into consideration that it's a fragile situation, it's a very insecure, instable situation now in Syria, time will tell us if it's going to be softened or harsh against the global terrorist organizations, Al-Qaeda, as well as Jabhat al-Nusra from Al-Qaeda, as well as the Daesh or Islamic State. I wouldn't predict any further steps that Assad will do, but time would tell us if it's a softening from when he's becoming weaker, or that he doesn't have any other choice but to go and start to unite with other Arab states. For example, Egypt. For example, Jordan.
We didn't even start talking about Egypt
Right.
and Libya, and this is only the beginning of the show, but we will continue, of course, talking about this. But before we continue, more on the fight in Aleppo from Shai Ben Ari.
A glimmer of hope, or yet another cynical twist in a conflict which has raged for nearly 5 years, claiming the lives of over 210,000 people. Staffan de Mistura, the United Nations mediator tasked with achieving an end to the violence plaguing Syria, made a promising announcement Tuesday evening as efforts continued to agree a local ceasefire in the war-torn city of Aleppo.
The government of Syria has indicated to me its willingness to halt all aerial bombing, all sorts, all types of aerial bombing and artillery shelling for a period of 6 weeks all over the city of Aleppo, from a date which we will be announcing from Damascus.
De Mistura hopes the proposed truce in Aleppo will be the first in a series of planned local ceasefires which would establish a basis for a lasting political resolution. Few, however, are expressing much optimism about the plan, and the UN envoy himself noted history has proven that any talk of a ceasefire has usually led to an acceleration of violence, as each side attempts to improve positions ahead of a possible deal. In this case, it seems history is repeating itself. A major regime offensive is underway even now in and around Aleppo, with the army and allied militias capturing areas to the north of the city, blocking the main road leading out of Aleppo towards the Turkish border. The army said it has taken 6 nearby villages back from rebel hands. Fighting continues in the city itself as well. In the district of El Manashir, jihadist fighters have claimed some success in battling the regime.
The army, the swine, tried to advance towards Al Manashir, but thank God with the enthusiasm of the heroes, the Mujahideen and the brothers, we were able to prevent them, and we killed 2 of Assad's dogs.
Reports have noted more than 80 casualties amongst rebel forces as a result of the offensive, at least 20 from the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front. The army has also suffered heavy losses, with 70 soldiers confirmed killed and 25 others unaccounted for.
We will engage also very much the opposition, hopefully to see them to respond to a similar request from the UN to halt mortar and rockets.
Rebel groups are yet to respond to the UN proposal, possibly because of de Mistura's statement last week describing President Bashar al-Assad as part of the solution to the conflict. As the diplomatic stalemate persists, those caught in the crossfire continue to pay the price.
Yes, and right now with us from Dr. Kemal Al-Abwani, a member of the Syrian opposition, joins us right now from Stockholm. Good evening, good to see you again. And let's try again. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very well.
Perfect, perfect. So we've been discussing here the matter. Is it really the point that Bashar al-Assad maybe is softening, or he's trying to signal something to the world? He's trying to signal something to the Arab world, or is there something of a bigger interest that we are not aware of?
Bashar al-Assad gave order to kill, to bomb, and he committed crimes against his people. The problem not between 2 states, 2 parts. It's between the regime and between the people. So who is committing these crimes cannot be part of solution. That is the wrong diagnosis of de Mistura. I think in this approaching to this issue, we will not achieve any peace in Aleppo or anywhere in Syria.
Just let's try before we were saying that we won't get any peace. So if we won't get any peace, like you're saying, in Syria, what is the solution that should happen after 3 years and more than 200,000 people are killed in these battles?
Safe zone in north and safe zone in south, and new authority under leading of United Nations or the coalition. The third option, we need third option, not terrorism, not fanatic, not criminal regime. This is the solution, free zone and safe zone. This is, we have to start from this, not from ceasefire between the gangs and between the gangs of the regime. We are suffering a lot, yes, but this solution is not good.
So try to explain to me maybe the new equation that we're not understanding here, because Hezbollah is supporting Assad. Not only supporting Assad, helping him in the fighting, also Iran. We see from the other side the rebels and the opposition, and also Jabhat al-Nusra, who is fighting and maybe being blamed that even Israel is using Jabhat al-Nusra to help them fight the Assad regime. So explain to me a little bit what is going on here. Maybe I don't understand the equation in a correct way.
It is regional war. I think it is regional war. Some part will defeat the others. That is the end of the war. We cannot speak with the local groups to cease fire. They have order from the others. I think anybody can broke this ceasefire and we will return to fight. The solution must be international solution to implement a new authority in Syria.
If we're talking about an international solution, like you're saying, international solution means what to the Syrian? It's not anymore Syria like we know, but a lot of countries that will be part or won't be anymore Syria, like the state Syria, the country Syria that we know?
The people of Syria is staying. I think we have duty to give the Syrian of people his right to rebuild his authority, his leadership, not the agents of Iran or agents of Al-Qaeda. No. I think the duty of the United Nations to give the Syrian people his right to rebuild his authority. This is the way to implement justice, to implement peace in Middle East and in Syria. Without this, we cannot start from a point and after that wait. And why you don't use the same principles with Daesh? Why you are fighting Daesh? If it is easy to find solution with the criminal regime, it's more easy to find solution with the criminal terrorism.
You know, maybe I will try to answer you in a sentence that maybe the UN is thinking, better the devil you know, because they started with opposition. Nobody knew, when I remember when we started talking about the fighting in Syria, nobody knew who exactly is the opposition, who exactly is fighting against Bashar al-Assad. At the end of the day, we discovered that these rebels are being helped by Jabhat al-Nusra. Jabhat al-Nusra is linked to Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a terror group. So, you know, this finds, let's say, the Syrian people in a really complicated situation, because if Bashar al-Assad is going, this will leave a big vacuum to maybe IS to come and control Syria.
To avoid vacuum, we have to start from safe zone from south and safe zone from north, under the watch of Turkey and Jordan. So we can start from points, and we can be sure that there is no terrorism. There is third option. Yes, we can start from these points. But in this way, I don't believe in this approaching to the issue.
Yes, Dr. Kamal Al-Abwani, thank you very, very much for this conversation with us.
Thank you.
Who can assure us that, you know, like we didn't know what was happening at the beginning of all this mess in Syria, who can assure us that maybe the UN is right, maybe it's better to stay with Bashar al-Assad, to get a diplomatic solution with Bashar al-Assad, to let's say, prevent the cases that happened in Iraq, to prevent the cases that happened in one way or another in Egypt, to prevent the cases that happened in Libya, and to say, okay, let's try it in a different way this time. Let's help the current regime so we won't get something even more horrible than what we are seeing right now.
Well, unfortunately, to my opinion, the Americans are totally wrong as far as their approach to Syria and to Bashar al-Assad. No, Bashar Assad cannot stay in power. It's impossible for him and for his regime and the Alawite to stay in power in Syria. They are a minority, first of all. They are controlling the country for many years. They have brought nothing but disaster to Syria. The Syrian people at large, or I mean the majority, will not accept him. Israel cannot accept him because he is on the Shiite crescent, so to say. As long as he is in Damascus, in power, the connection between the direct connection between Hezbollah and Tehran is there, and we should not accept it.
But you know
Turkey
what
will
is
not
making
accept
the subject more complicated is when the Shiite is right now fighting the most horrible terror group that we ever saw after Al-Qaeda, which is the IS. So it just makes the things even more complicated. When we see Hezbollah is fighting IS, when we see that Iran is also providing some kind of help to fight the IS, maybe this whole big man, the bad guy with the cooperation with the United States. So you know, I stopped seeing who the bad guys and who aren't the good guys, because it seems that everything here is mixing up and maybe creating a big chaos all over again.
So let's focus not on Assad, but on Daesh, which is the issue, the factor, the game changer here. Whether Assad will be in still the leader or not, it doesn't matter, because still the global jihad is growing to intensify and to growth, and to the evolving threat of the global jihad, whether it's Daesh or Al-Qaeda, still exists and evolved and more and more. It's become tougher. Again, and repeat it, it's not that Assad will be there or not. Not necessarily is the reason or the consequences of him to go away or to be toppled won't change a lot. What will be the changes after the Daesh will go over Syria, will seize more and more thwarts in areas and territories in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Jordan. This is what have to urgent us.
What we're saying is, yes.
I don't think that Daesh taking control, so to say, on Syria is a big disaster. First of all, not for Israel. I don't see the threat, surprising or not, by Daesh, imposed by Daesh on the others. If Assad falls and his regime, and let's say Daesh with the 20,000 or 30,000 combatants there, it's not a big deal. They are the dominant element in Syria. The war is not over there. After Assad, there won't be peace in Syria. Syria has already fallen apart, and it will come out in 4 or 5 different states.
So yeah, but I totally
the
disagree with
Kurds,
this.
the Druzes, the Alawites, nobody will accept ISIS.
But a game changer is Daesh. Daesh is the major factor here. You cannot say that there are not, the only 20,000 or 30,000 fighters, they're only in Syria. But what about Iraq? What about all over?
How many are they?
They're about a lot more. They're above 50, but it's not depends on the quantity. But what they change, it's the consequences. It's not only politically, not only militarily. You don't have to look only on Syria. Let's see what's going on in the Middle East, in the whole Middle East and Africa as well.
What I'm trying to say is that nobody is going to accept this horrible organization, the Islamic State. Nobody. Neither Egypt, no Saudi Arabia, or the people of Syria, or Jordan, Israel, of course.
But you know what we're saying?
They are going to be busy for many years with fighting against their neighbors.
But you know what's the problem?
Not necessarily with Israel.
But you know what's the problem? What we are seeing here is the collapse of Bilad al-Sham when we're talking about Syria. And just a while ago, we almost saw the collapse of al-Umam, Egypt. So it seems that the Arab countries or the Muslim countries are not able to control the situation inside, like their inner local problems are just going spreading outside, and more than that, now they need to face the IS. So again, the people are looking maybe for democracy. The people are looking to change the regime, but the people are also seeing that maybe on the other side of the map, there is this certain group that can change the game, and they are changing the game.
The coalition that is playing against the Islamic State is so strong, starting with Egypt, not to count Israel, of course, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states. They are afraid from the Islamic State organization more than Israel should be afraid. We shouldn't be afraid.
But
the war is going on and will go on in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq for many years from now. And as I said, Israel is not at the top priority of ISIS. So the enemy tomorrow is not going to be Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
No, of course, it's not the top priority for Israel, but it is the top priority, becoming the top priority for the Arab countries, because they are becoming more and more the target for IS. And
there is nothing
for,
we can
for
do.
Israel, the top priority is the Arab countries. So are the Arab countries. So it's like all connected to another.
Right. Daesh forced the Arab state to unite, to put aside disputes, rivalries, and other differences among themselves and between themselves. They forced them to unite. Let's see what's going on now in Egypt and also in Jordan. They forced them to go and then to cooperate and to go maybe into the coalition.
I have no doubt that Egypt is going to overcome the present problems in Gaza, in Sinai, in Libya,
You're
and
very
inside
optimistic.
Egypt.
I'm not sure about Sinai. Is a huge problem. Sinai is
a huge problem, but not if the Egyptian regime will take it seriously. Unlike what happened during Mubarak's times, they ignored Sinai. Once they take Sinai seriously and Gaza seriously, it's not only a matter of time. The Egyptian army is so well equipped and so big. It's not a match. It's a mismatch of the history.
Yeah, but they are being dragged into Libya, and
financial problems in Egypt
to the honey. It's like it's
again. How many Daesh people and the Ansar al-Sharia? No, Ansar al-Sharia. Over there, how many people are there?
There are enough in order to cause the instability, the insecurity, and to go through...
To kill 20 Copts.
But it starts
to kidnap
with the
35 Egyptians working there. But it's not an army that can take Egyptian land, for instance. They cannot invade Egypt.
They started
the recent attack that we saw on Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula, was one of the most brutal attacks that we saw against Egypt, coming from the outside just 2 weeks ago. So, some people will say that not such a long time ago, the Israeli army was not a big army, but the Israeli army managed to battle against 7 armies and win at the end. So history teaches us that it's not the amount of people. Yeah, it's not the quantity.
Okay, what I would like to say is that the Egyptian army, with all these vicious attacks on Egyptian targets in North Sinai and other places in Egypt itself, and now in the Western Desert, the Egyptian army, or Egypt, is not going to collapse. Egypt is not going to be taken by ISIS or the Ansar Baitel, whatever it is. It's not the case. We see in Syria, they are killing each other, hundreds, how many? 300,000 people killed over there, combatants and civilians, and still Bashar is there.
So we started with the question whether he will be there or toppled there, or will be, slaughtered, or will be away.
He cannot stay.
He doesn't. No,
as far as Israel is concerned, as far as Turkey is concerned, and I think that also...
He is not the factor. What I'm mentioning and what I've just started to say, he's not the reason of how the Middle East is going to reshape, because the Daesh or ISIS reshape and dictate the political order, the status quo right away. It's what happened with Daesh. What Daesh does and do every day, it's what caused the Middle East to be shaped by, I mean, to be changed.
You know, I want to take it another floor. How will the international community is going to manage right now? Because we see the United States has a lot of interest. The United States knows that Russia is backing Bashar al-Assad, and the United States and Russia are not in such, let's say,
in Saudi Arabia
warm,
is in a fragile state
warm relationship, and we know that Russia is also backing in one way or another Iran, and Iran is not also in a warm relationship with the United States. So how this is going to change the fight against IS, because, you know, again, this is connected.
Daesh is the major factor here again. That's why I'm saying that it's not a minor, you know, actor to put aside and say, okay, there are only thousands here, thousands there. No, it's not enough. I think there are. What we will see in the near future is a lot more tougher, a lot more stronger, and a lot more crucifying that we have seen until today. They are going to repeat it.
And not only that, if we're talking about the battle of mind, because it's more about the battle of mind and the battle of ideology than the battle on the ground.
As we just spoke yesterday, it's a battle of ideas. It's a battle of ideologies. You cannot only use the airstrikes against the ideology. It's not enough. See what's going on in Libya at the moment. Listen, see what's going on in the whole Africa.
Because
well, I wonder what will be the reaction of Turkey on the one hand, Turkey, the Sunni empire, and Iran on the other hand, the Shiite empire. What are they? How are they going to react to the Islamic State becoming the major factor in Syria and Iraq?
Right.
Maybe this is what is driving the Arab world crazy, that this Islamic State, this small group, this not small but horrible group, at the end of the day is taking all the focus from the big empires, from the big countries who are trying to get the focus from the international community. But at the end of the day, the United States is dealing with IS and not with Turkey. And Europe is dealing with IS and not with Turkey being part of the European and the coalition and the European community. So we only started talking about this. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. We're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Syrian military claims to have taken control of key areas north of Aleppo a day after the UN announced the Assad regime is willing to test a local ceasefire in the city. Ukrainian troops pull out of the embattled town of Debaltseve, leaving it in control of pro-Russian separatists. Meanwhile, NATO urges Russia to withdraw all forces from the east. The largest treasure ever found in Israel, 2,000 gold coins dating back 1,000 years, recovered from the seabed. I-24 News goes to the Aegean harbor in Caesarea to see it up close. Welcome back to the news today. Wounded Ukrainian soldiers arrived at a military hospital in Ukraine today following the army's gradual withdrawal from the east of the country. Meanwhile, world leaders continue to blame Russian-backed rebels of violating the ceasefire in Ukraine and a possible threat of more sanctions on Moscow. Ayman Siksik has more.
Potential relief for residents of embattled East Ukraine Wednesday as the Ukrainian army began pulling out of a town under siege by Russian-backed separatists.
Today, Ukraine's armed forces are undertaking an organized withdrawal of units involved in the anti-terror operation from the town of Debaltseve. Currently, near 80% of Ukrainian units have left that sector.
Rebel forces had fought their way into Debaltseve on Tuesday, violating a ceasefire agreement which came into effect just 2 days before. But NATO Secretary General on Wednesday accused pro-Russian separatists of threatening the Minsk Accord, brokered by Germany, France, Ukraine and Russia.
We have seen that the ceasefire has not been respected. We have seen the separatists in eastern Ukraine making advances, especially in and around Debaltseve.
This statement was backed by European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini.
Let me stress that not only the European Union but the whole international community, with the resolution that was adopted yesterday in the UN Security Council, stands for a full implementation of all points of the Minsk agreement reached.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the first anniversary of the Maidan massacre was marked on Wednesday. The event commemorates the killing of an estimated 100 protesters by riot police in central Kiev. Following the bloody events in the Maidan uprising, opposition leaders signed a peace pact mediated by the European Union on February 21st, another agreement made in the hopes of ending the ongoing war in Ukraine.
And with me from Kiev is Vladimir Solohub. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Good evening. Good to be back with you again.
So, Vladimir, let's try to understand. Russia is not actually pulling back from all this. So, ceasefire or not, Russia is still in and in all forces.
Well, it doesn't look like the complete ceasefire. First of all, Ukrainian troops are pulling out of Debaltseve, and this was a major event because the president himself flew to eastern Ukraine, and the president of Ukraine was greeting the soldiers who were leaving Debaltseve in a nearby town of Artemysk, some 60 or 70 kilometers away from Debaltseve. This was quite a significant event because the president of Ukraine was located so close to the front line, and on the other hand, he was greeting the soldiers who were defending the town of Debaltseve for many weeks.
So, Vladimir, explain to me, was it like a diplomatic, let's say, resolution or a diplomatic move that the Ukrainian will retreat, and because they knew that the Russians will stay and won't pull back, to show to the world that here we are doing our part of the deal, they are not?
Well, it looks like there have been some talks behind the scenes, and looks like Ukrainian president, the Ukrainian side was pressured by the international community, probably by Germany and France, who were part of negotiation, who were at the negotiation table in Minsk last week, to pull away the troops, because as the situation was developing on the ground during the last several days, it was clear and evident that Ukrainians are almost entrapped in this town, and they will be slaughtered if they will not retreat. However, this means that the border of the Ukraine/separatist territory has now moved further to the west.
Yeah, it's amazing that you're using the word slaughtered, because just today Ukraine is going to mark the first anniversary of the Maidan massacre. How they're going to mark this?
Well, this was basically, to give a bit of the background, this was the biggest loss of civilian deaths in modern Ukrainian history, and this massacre took place in the center of the European country, in the center of Kyiv. There are commemoration festivities starting from throughout the entire week, but obviously the culmination of the events will be on the 20th, when last year, on the 20th of February, more than 50 protesters were killed by snipers in the center of Kyiv.
You know, in a sad way, this commemoration is coming at a good time in the ceasefire, when Ukraine wants to show to the world that they are doing their part of the deal, but the others are not. Vladimir, thank you very, very much for this again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, in Nigeria, the military says it has killed 300 Boko Haram militants in the recapture of 11 towns taken by the militants, while the leader of the jihadist group is vowing to disrupt Nigeria's already delayed general elections. I-24 News correspondent Elio Homberg with the latest developments.
The multiple-zone fight against Boko Haram continues. The terrorist organization's leader has released a new video in which he threatens the, quote, leaders and disbelievers, and vows to disrupt Nigeria's upcoming general elections.
These elections that you're planning to do will not happen in peace, even if that costs us our lives. Allah will not leave you to proceed with these elections even after us, because you are saying that authority is from people to people, which means that people should rule each other. But Allah says that authority is only to Him. Only His rule is the one which applies to this land.
Nigeria's general elections had been scheduled for February 14th, but were postponed by 6 weeks due to the need of security services for more time to contain the violence in the Boko Haram stronghold, the northeast of the country. The Nigerian military claims its forces, backed by airstrikes, have killed more than 300 Boko Haram fighters during an operation to recapture 11 towns and villages since the start of the week. In the meantime, in the neighboring Cameroon, troop reinforcement in the country's north is gaining momentum as part of the preparation for a serious attack on the Boko Haram bastions. The United States Embassy in the country is also deepening its commitment to countering the jihadist group, saying it will help the Cameroonian army secure equipment to fight the jihadist terrorist group.
Officials in Erbil said today that Kurdish forces have pushed back a major attack by IS south of Erbil. The local commander claimed to have killed 34 members of the jihadist group after around 300 attacked a set of villages. He said the operation received air support from the U.S.-led coalition. Indeed, today, that coalition launched 16 airstrikes on targets in Iraq and Syria. And joining us right now to understand a little bit more about the situation is journalist Hermione G. in Erbil. Good to have you back. I see you're back in not such a safe place, but I hope that you're warm. Hermione, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Hermione, let's try to understand what is the strategic point that IS fighters tried to counter today.
Well, the town of Mahmoud is about 45 kilometers southwest of Erbil, and it's the first Kurdish territory that they tried to attack way back in August that eventually brought in the international coalition that started the first airstrikes that we saw here. So Mahmoud has been a point of contention, like I said, since last summer. Back in August, the coalition forces and the Peshmerga managed to reclaim the town really quite quickly, but they've never managed to push them out very far. Mahmoud is in a plain, so it's this huge open space, and the militants have basically just been pushed back and been sitting there ever since. I've been down there, and from the Peshmerga front lines, you can see the IS positions really very close by. So what we saw last night was sort of a very extreme example, but it's something that happens fairly constantly, that the IS launched these small skirmishes on the Peshmerga bases in that area. But significantly, it shows that although the Peshmerga might reclaim certain areas, the IS is still very present throughout northern Iraq.
So, Hermione, once we talked about Kobani being a big, let's say, strategical place, is it like finding this, are we seeing it like the new Kobani? Is it like a new strategic point that IS is looking for?
I think certainly any successful attacks that IS manages to make on Kurdish territory will be a huge propaganda coup for them. I think realistically they know that it would be very, very difficult for them to claim to take any land here, to take Erbil, because the people here would not accept it. Unlike Mosul, where the reason they managed to take the city so quickly was because they had a lot of local support. That would not be the case in Kurdistan. Having said that, it's very much in their interest to cause as much damage as possible, to keep the Peshmerga distracted, keep the Peshmerga busy, and also to show we're still here when we haven't gone away. It's an act of defiance against the Kurds and also, very importantly, of course, against the international coalition. So Mahmoud is certainly symbolic. I don't think we need to worry that they will be successful, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more attacks along the lines of last night's attack.
Yes, Hermione G., good to see you again, and thank you very, very much for this. Take care.
Thank you.
Iran's supreme leader warned today Tehran may resist global sanctions imposed over its nuclear program by cutting back gas exports. Speaking in Tehran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed to respond to international pressure, accusing the West of using the sanctions to stop progress in the country. Iran is currently in talks with the so-called P5+1 Western powers attempting to end a decade-old standoff over its disputed nuclear program. And we're going to something else. More than a week after money laundering allegations against HSBC first grabbed headlines, Swiss police are searching the bank's Geneva office. According to prosecutors, HSBC private bank is being investigated, as well as specific individuals, for, quote, suspected aggravated money laundering. More from Eli Ochenberg.
After opening a criminal inquiry into allegations of aggravated money laundering, the second probe to hit HSBC this week, Geneva's public prosecutor searched the bank's Lakeside Swiss office Wednesday.
As of now, we aim at securing all the information concerning the accounts and clients who have been mentioned as detaining funds resulting from criminal offenses. We are hence looking for indications of money laundering, since it is indeed for aggravated money laundering that an investigation has been opened.
HSBC said it was cooperating with the Swiss authorities, while there is a possibility the investigation would be extended to people suspected of committing or participating in money laundering. The raid comes more than a week after allegations first emerged that HSBC's Swiss private bank may have helped wealthy clients evade taxes. HSBC's Swiss unit has been in the spotlight since 2008, when a former IT employee fled Geneva with files allegedly showing evidence of tax evasion by clients. French tax authorities later passed the information to their counterparts around the world. The bank's main concern may be that the U.S. authorities could look at reopening the 2012 deferred prosecution agreement, which followed a $1.9 billion fine after it was found to have helped move hundreds of millions of dollars in illicit drug money through the U.S. financial system.
Yes, when it comes to comedic moments caught on camera, it seems no one is in international politics is as generous in providing the goods as Joe Biden. The U.S. Vice President has now spent 40 years in politics, and they've been filled with awkward moments, let's say, starting with the recent ceremony with Defense Minister Ashton Carter. Ayman Siksik has a few of the highlights.
It was meant to be a formal event, the swearing-in of U.S. Defense Minister Ashton Carter. But the limelight was diverted away from Carter as U.S. Vice President Joe Biden couldn't keep his hands off Carter's wife, Stephanie. Stephanie Carter seemed frozen as Biden's grip seemed to last too long. Meanwhile, the newly sworn-in Defense Secretary continued with his remarks.
I'm grateful to the President and the Vice President for your trust and confidence, and to the U.S. Senate as well.
Things went from uncomfortable to plain awkward as Biden bent down slightly, apparently to whisper in Carter's ear. The so-called awkward moment attracted media interest immediately, but Biden is no stranger to this particular situation. In 2012, he was photographed in the same position with a voter in Ohio while campaigning, and later that year with former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But Biden's affections transcend the U.S., as he gave the same warm treatment to Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and former President of Ireland, Mary McAleese. In the political correctness-obsessed American culture, Biden's antics may seem bold, but an article by the Associated Press proved Americans are forgiving of Biden's awkward moments, calling the situation with Carter's wife just Biden being Biden.
They're good friends. No? Okay. Now to sports. With me is the host of the I-24 News Sports Magazine, Jonathan Regev.
Evening.
Evening. How are you? All good?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. You know, last time people asked me, what is a Varekas movie? Now we talked before about some really weird phone calls that we're
annoying
getting.
Phone calls that want to sell you all these things that you don't want. Terrible.
Yeah.
Don't call us anymore.
How they have my number? This is something that I know.
It's random. They
but
just
let's talk about the real thing and some people with real challenges.
Yes, we're speaking about the Austin Marathon, Austin, Texas. Kenyan runner Austin Negetich. She was first, but then she started too fast. She collapsed very close to the finish line. Here we can see it. She said, I am coming to the finish line no matter what. She could not stand on her feet. She crawled all the way. You see one of the organizers, they sent wheelchairs. She said, no wheelchair. I'm crossing the finish line on my own force, and she did. Crawling, beautiful, beautiful story. And yes, she made it at the end.
Why did she collapse?
She simply started too fast, and she came. It was a few hundred meters before the finish line. She could just not do it anymore. She was absolutely exhausted, and she simply collapsed. But she made it. She made it a point of it to finish the race on her own, and she did.
Unbelievable. Byron, Munich.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They played last night in Ukraine against Shakhtar Donetsk. Shakhtar Donetsk cannot play in their home stadium in Donetsk, focal point of the civil war.
All the problems
Yes, so they play in Lviv, Western Ukraine. And the people of Bayern Munich, they said, if we're here, we're not only going to be here for football. And they went to visit injured children in a hospital in Ukraine. Yes, good PR for Bayern Munich, that's true. And yet, when high-profile people come there and they go to visit and they remind us all that behind all these wars, all these words of civil war, there are children and other people getting injured.
Children,
it's
women,
important, yes.
Civilians, innocent
It's important that we all remember that.
And let's go to Namibia.
Yes, this is the place.
Amazing race.
This is the place where we bring the crazy kind of races. This is one of them. How does it feel to run 500 kilometers in 9 days in the Namibian desert for two Scottish people of all people? That's what these two people have been doing, the endurance race in Namibia over the desert for 9 days. They ran just about 55 kilometers per day.
People
per day
are like racing in Namibia.
Yes, 55 kilometers per day, 9 days in a row in the desert.
It's not. They don't have anything more interesting to do.
It's a challenge. They like the challenge. They want to see it. Let's see if we finish or if we die along the way or something like that.
It's a challenge. Don't yalla me. The people are.
Tell them to go.
Tell them to go. Yalla, yalla, yalla is let's go in Hebrew. Yalla, yalla. So yalla, Yonatan.
Yalla, go home.
Yalla, bye.
Yalla.
Yes, Israeli parties are waging video campaigns, wars ahead of the upcoming elections, trying to reach as many screens as possible with humoristic, frequently controversial presentations. I-24 News cultural correspondent Shahal Peled on the political viral phenomenon.
As Israel enters the final month of its election season, the buzz over viral campaigns is louder and stronger than ever. In the past weeks, the politicians dusted off their acting skills and provided humorous insights into their political agenda. After portraying a kindergarten teacher and a babysitter, Prime Minister Netanyahu joked about the supposedly marginal issues of his and his wife's alleged hedonistic lifestyle and expensive household. In the latest video, produced by Netanyahu's Likud party, it continues to lash out at Labour Party leader Isaac Bougie Herzog and especially his partner to the Zionist Union, Tzipi Livni, in an attempt to deter the Labour Party voters. Meanwhile, the Labour Party is working hard on breaking the soft image of its leader Herzog. After adding a famous publicist to the campaign, following criticism it wasn't generating enough attention, a new video hit the news feeds. The nasal voice of Herzog, which many claim is doing him the most harm in his attempt to be elected as premier, was altered in this clip to prove a point. And on the other side of the political map, the Jewish West Bank settlers have come under fire. A video dubbed The Eternal Jew, the same name as that given to a 1940 Nazi propaganda movie, was published. Consisting of anti-Semitic motives, left-wing organizations are depicted in it as Nazi Germany-era caricatures pleasing their anti-Semitic European masters for money. After causing a public storm and condemned by Netanyahu himself, the regional Samaria county denied knowledge of its existence. But according to Israeli Haaretz newspaper, the clip was presented by the Samaria Settlers Council to the county committee, and most of its elements were approved. As election date gets closer, it appears both sides are taking off the gloves and shifting into high gear, trying to take over the primary sources of news these days, social media.
Yes, when Jewish people start comparing themselves to Nazis, this is the point where you say stop and let's think about this entire thing. Off of Israel's Mediterranean coast, the largest trove of gold coins ever found, 2,000 of them, over 1,000 years old. Mael Ben Uliel went to Caesarea to see for himself.
Like in childhood dreams, amateur scuba divers in Israel made an extraordinary discovery a few days ago in the middle of a diving session in the ancient port of Caesarea. They fell upon a treasure by chance, over 2,000 gold coins dating back over 1,000 years. It's the most significant treasure of gold coins discovered until this day.
6 of us scuba divers wanted to take advantage of the day before the beginning of another expected storm. We wanted to do a quick dive.
After 10 or 15 minutes in the water, Zvika signaled to me to come over to him. The others were looking at fish in the area. And at the moment I approached him, I see him with one coin in his hand, and there was another in the sand. We looked at each other and understood we had found something interesting. We plunged our hands into the sand and took out hundreds of coins.
This is the treasure, shown here on the table of the Director of Marine Archaeology at the Israel Antiquities Authority.
Amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah, it is. The first time in my life that I have so many gold on my table or in my hands, and I can understand why women like it.
These coins, dating back to the Fatimid period, likely came from a shipwreck of a boat transporting income taxes set for the Egyptian central governor.
All these golds came from the gold mines from the Maghreb, because the Fatimids started from there and they ruled on all these areas, all the northern Africa until Yemen and to the north to Syria.
In excellent condition, the coins didn't even need to be cleaned. Some of them even carry bite marks to prove their quality. The discovery was made possible after the winter storms shifted the seabed. All these coins will become a research focus for Kobe and his team. Marine archaeologists congratulated the group of scuba divers, who they see as model citizens.
We didn't think of 1 second that we should keep the treasure or about what we must do with it. We notified the Antiquities Authority right away. The excitement of Kobe and his team was sufficient for us. The ultimate financial value isn't important.
How come I never dive and find something, anything, just because I don't dive? Okay, with me for a look back in history is correspondent Danny Zweibel. That was like a really big, useless piece of information for our viewers.
I like it.
I'm sorry, but you're going to give them some really useful information.
It's, I hate to be the bearer of bad news every time I come on the show, but history sometimes repeats itself, and this is what we want to avoid when it's bad. On February 19th, 1944, that was over 70 years ago, tomorrow, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, U.S. President, orders the detention and internment of all West Coast Japanese Americans. This was World War II times, and people were scared. So this mass hysteria actually led the president to sign this executive order, and it interned 100,000 Japanese women, men, and children. Some of these people had to sell their businesses. They had a week to sell their businesses, to sell their lives, and to go into internment camps.
You know, this just, I don't know if it reminds me more of World War II, if it reminds me more of Guantanamo, if it reminds me more of, I don't know, it's just when you see this, when you say always that history repeats itself, this is it.
I mean, listen, today we're talking about when we have a wave of hysteria against an ethnic or religious or racial population. I mean, we see this in Europe, perhaps with Muslims. We see it happening again and again in society. And when we look back actually at the history, we're finding out that perhaps it wasn't because of security reasons.
Was it necessary for security reasons?
When I looked at the evidence, it suggested that perhaps it wasn't, because there was many Japanese who were living in Hawaii who were not interned. The ones who were in California were. So which makes us think, based on the evidence, that it was the white population that had pushed for this because of, again, the wave of mass hysteria and fear. And some of that fear ends up spreading and ends up pushing government decisions. And we see it again and again. And this is a stain forever on the US of A. And a good president, many people really love what FDR did throughout his presidency, but this will always be a stain forever on his
It's
term.
always, you know, each and every president wants to leave, you know, something that the people will remember him for, and I don't think that he wants, that he would have liked that. This would be one of the things that people will remember for him. Danny Swabel, thank you very much for this useful information.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for just.
No worries.
Thank you very much. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and then we will be back for elections 2015. I don't want to say any word. Just